I love him. He's so fantastic. I don't know what button I'm supposed to push. Is it this one? No. Is it this one? Ah, there it is. Hi, I'm Booray Perry from Tampa, Florida. I'm a professional photographer. If you would like to follow me, all you have to do is go to YouTube, @Booray Perry. Go to Instagram, @Booray Perry. I know other people have fancy things. You just take a picture of it. It shows them all their stuff. Listen, if you're looking for Booray Perry, you're going to find Booray Perry. It's not hard to find me. Just put Booray Perry into Google. You're going to find me all day long. Do I have to stand by the thing? Oh, that's not going to be good. I can't stand back there. There are two kinds of people in the world. There's artists and there's craftsmen. If you give an artist a piece of wood, they look at it and they go, oh, I see something, I envision something, and they craft and they sand and they carve and they create this beautiful piece of art and they hand it to you. Here is my gift to you. I'm a craftsman. If you hand me a piece of wood, I go, here's a doorknob. That's what I do. Most of the people that you'll see speak here, they are photographers. They had a passion, they had artistic, they had a vision. They became photographers, they couldn't help it. Then they became speakers. I was a speaker. I was a professional disc jockey and a comedian for 20 years. And then I became a photographer. So they're photographers who became speakers, and I'm a speaker who became a photographer. I do not have the creative juice that they have. I have to work at it. You all know that one person in school, right, who just seems to just breeze through math. Meanwhile, you're home hitting the books every single night. That's me. I'm hitting the books every single night. Let's go back one. Oh, this is going to drive me crazy. I guess I got to stand over here. I can't stand in one place when I'm speaking. Maybe that'll work, right? Let's try that. Maybe, maybe not. I am not Yoda. I am not the smartest person in this room. I am not the best photographer in this room, by far. But when I speak, I tend to speak in absolutes. So I'll say, this is what you should be doing, and that's how you should do that. And you'll be out there going, you're crazy. I may very well be, and I may be wrong. You have to find your own path. And if you can watch me speak and get just one or two nuggets that might work for you, then my mission here is accomplished. But don't get mad at me because I seem like that jerk who's talking about stuff like he knows everything. You know, it's just the way I talk. Don't take it personally. Oh, this is going to be crazy. Every time I have to change a slide, I'll be like, my mantra is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. I don't want things to be hard. I don't take more stuff than I need. I don't use more stuff than I need. Let's go back. Oh, this is going to drive me nuts. Come on. Okay.
Does it have enough lead to put on
the... Yeah. I've got a back. The thing is, I've got a backup in my bag because I carry backups for everything. This is a friend of mine. He's doing portraits at a small school, right? So he asked me to come in and help him. He has a trailer. This is the first of like 4 trips of stuff that we bring in to do these portraits that he's doing for these children at this school. Here's what I bring in, right? This is everything that I need right here. One package, small, 4 wheels. I can roll onto elevators. I can take it anywhere quick and easy. You don't have to have a lot of equipment to get the job done. Here's the lighting that I carry. One big Godox 30 by 30 softbox. By the way, thank you to Godox for bringing me in to speak to you guys today. A couple of their cones. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. 2 AD200s. 2 on-camera speed lights, which can double off camera. And a reflector, which is, in effect, another light. So I'm carrying 5 lights, all in a package that's about this big. And a remote. A magic remote, which we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. If you go to B&H's website and you put in Booray, you'll find the Booray kit. This is basically what I use for 90% of the work that I do. 1 stand, 1 light, 1 softbox, 1 remote. Now, there are a couple of things missing from this kit, and I find this funny. We forgot to add the bracket. I guess I assumed you would just get duct tape and just wrap it around the top of the pole. But no, you're going to need a bracket and also the standard reflector. This is the best $7.95 you will ever spend in your life. You will get so much value out of this $7.95, and I'll talk about how I use this in just a few minutes. I also carry 3 light stands, and one of them is short. I carry a tripod, and I carry a background. I carry the tripod and background only if I need the tripod and the background. A lot of times, I don't. So before we start talking about lighting and lighting placement, we're going to talk about camera setup. And it's because I think a lot of people don't spend enough time talking about this. And there's a reason for that. Photographers are they're creative, right? So when you ask them a question about how they set things up, they use inspiration. They have a photographer will tell you how he sets up a shot, and they will tell you on Monday they set it up A, B, C, D. And then on Tuesday, if you ask them the same question, they'll go, well, first I do D, then E, then F, and then A. And you're like, wait a minute. That's not the order that you did it the first time. I need a recipe. I need a formula, right? I'm just learning. Give me a formula I can follow. And then later, when I reach your level, I'll be able to just pull it out of thin air. But for right now, please give me a process. So this is my process. ASIF, aperture, shutter, ISO, flash, in that order. This is the order in which I set up my camera. And if you need like a device to help you remember it, there you go. A short iguana farts. And if you're wondering what that looks like, it looks like this. This is what you get if you go to Fiverr and you ask them for a drawing of a short iguana farting at a party. I actually did this, put it in my show, and then I realized there may be an even better one, and it is as if, right? Clueless. So ASIF, as if. We start with aperture. And these are my settings on my camera. They're not going to be my final settings, right? I'm going to change things around. But what I'm looking for is the pace car. You know, in the course of the race, you're going to speed up, you're going to slow down, you're going to hit the brakes, you might crash, you're going to pit stop. But at the beginning of the race, you get behind the pace car and you go the same speed every single time. And then you start your journey. So I like to have everything set up the same every single time, because the less I have to think about my camera, the more my mind is free to try and be creative. And believe me, as I mentioned, I need every bit of brain power I can get to be creative, because I am not as creative as the people that you will meet most of the time who do this for a living. So if I'm going to take a picture of one person, I start at f2.8. If it's going to be more than one person, like two people side by side or something like that, I'll go to 4.0. And if it's going to be a group, I start at 5.6, because I'm worried about focus. I want to make sure that everyone's in focus. And after I've shot a shot or two, if I want to get tricky and try and change things around, great, I can. But to get started, let's just be safe. Now these are APS-C settings, because I shoot Fuji. So if you're shooting full frame, which I used to shoot, this card used to say 4 and 5.6 and 6.0 or whatever the number is after 5.6. Go back. Thank you. Shutter speed. You ever buy a belt? Do you buy a belt where it goes in the last hole? Do you buy a belt where it goes in the first hole? No, because you got to leave room in case you gain weight or lose weight. You're going to gain weight, just so you know. But it's nice to have that dream just for a few minutes, right? When you put it in the middle hole, and you're like, I could lose weight, and I'll need to be able to tighten the belt up a little bit more. I do the same thing with my shutter speed. I start at shutter speed 1/100th of a second. Why? Because at 1/100th of a second, I have leeway. I can gain or lose weight. I can gain or lose a stop, and I'm fine. So if I need to go back to my shutter and change my shutter to get the light where I want it to be, I can get more light in the camera by going one stop to 1/50th of a second, and I'm still okay hand-holding my camera. I can get less light in my camera by going one stop to 1/200th of a second, and I haven't hit my flash sync speed yet. I have a full stop on either side. I have room to move. If you start at 1/50th of a second, or you start bumped up against the flash speed, you're limiting your options. The next step, ISO. Now with a mirrorless camera, this is easy. You just look at your scene and you adjust your ISO until the background looks the way you want it to look. But if you're shooting with a DSLR and you can't do that, you can't see it in real time, then what I would always do was I would set my scene to one stop under 0. So, center needle, that's correct exposure, I would go to -1. Because I like for my background to be one stop under my subject. That's where I start. It may not end up there, but to start, that's where I'm going to start. That way, the flash is going to light my subject. They're going to pop off from that background a little bit. It's not hard to do. What I do wish the camera manufacturers would do was make it easier to change your ISO. Camera manufacturers are still making cameras along the idea that it used to be back in the days of film, where you put the film in and you set your ISO and you never mess with it again. And it's not that way anymore. We change our ISO all the time. I shoot at 3200 without blinking, right? And if you're at 400 versus 800 versus 1600, it doesn't change the way your picture looks anymore. The grain doesn't come roaring in at 900 like it used to. However, changing your shutter speed makes a big difference. Changing your aperture makes a big difference. So I think there's going to be a new generation that's going to come along, and they're going to start using ISO really like a member of the exposure triangle the way they should, and they're going to be changing it all the time because it has the least effect on your pictures. But right now, it's change your aperture, change your shutter speed, change my ISO. There's a button I have to push, and then I have to turn the dial. And it's not that way on all cameras, but it's that way on a lot of them. And I think it's going to change hopefully soon. Then just season to taste. Get your background looking the way you want it to look. Now let's talk about the magic button. Have you ever had a thing where like you use something all the time and you're like, why don't they make it that does why don't they make a thing that does this? Like I had a girlfriend once who complained for a year because they didn't make a wine cooler that was diet. And then they came out with a diet wine cooler. And she was like, yes, they listened to me. For years, I said, why don't they make a remote where I can shoot in TTL, and then after I take the picture, I can push a button, and it will switch to manual and set the manual power to whatever the last flash was. And they did it. It's called TCM, TTL Convert to Manual. It's fantastic, because before, if you were going to shoot in manual, you had to either use a light meter, or you had to shoot in manual, shoot, fix it, shoot, change it. Now, if you want to shoot in manual, shoot in TTL. If you look at it and you go, that's a good exposure, convert to manual. Now it's locked in. Fantastic when you're shooting, you're going to be shooting at a wedding and you're taking a lot of groups in the same spot. You're doing headshots. You want consistent light all the way through. You don't want the camera to be making an adjustment every single time someone comes in. One person's wearing white, one person's wearing black. It's going to change your flash. You don't want that. You want the same one every time so the background looks the same in every shot. So convert to manual after you get your first clean shot, and then rock it from there on out. Got to get a sip of water. I had cancer. Tonsil cancer, and the irony is not lost on me that a guy who made his living with his voice had tonsil cancer. And as a result, I only have half my salivary glands, so I don't produce spit as well as anyone else does. I couldn't spit on you if I tried. I will. Just come see me later. Just ask me. I'll be happy to try and spit on you. So I have to drink a lot. I'm so self-conscious about it, so I say it a lot. And right now, my friends are watching this at home, and someone just want to bet, because every time I speak, there's a lottery as to how deep I'll get in before I mention that I had cancer. Right now, someone's like, who had 6 minutes? So, once you've got all that dialed in and you've got a picture, if you're in a location where you shoot a lot, if you're in your studio or if you're on location, a doctor's office you come back to once a month for headshots, go to your custom settings in your camera and set one of them so that it's all memorized and it's there for you. And then when you come back to that location, instead of having to do this all over again, you can just go C8, C7, or whichever one you've got memorized. It's a great time-saving device. So let's start off with one light, the fastest and most versatile way to do something. And before I get into this, the name of the program is Advanced Lighting. And right about now, someone's going, one light, really? This is advanced lighting class. Why one light? How many people saw Joe McNally yesterday? Did you guys see Joe? Okay. I'm not Yoda, and Joe McNally is not Yoda either. Joe McNally is the guy that Yoda learned everything from. Okay? No one knows more about lighting than Joe. And if you look at his images, you will be blown away. And you will see, oh, here's 3 helicopters and a crane and a hippopotamus and a one-armed model. And 16 lights and color gels, and oh my gosh, it's amazing. And then the next light will be a model in a warehouse, and it's all natural light. Because advanced lighting is not about more lighting. Advanced lighting is about understanding light, working with what you have, not using more than you have. I've told my wedding clients who come in and say, talk to a photographer. They bring 3 photographers and 2 assistants to the wedding. What do you bring? I go, it's just me. I don't bring anybody else. I go, really? I go, yeah. You gonna get a band? Yeah. You want 6 guys that play in a garage band, or you want Bruce Springsteen by himself? And they go, oh. And then I go, I'm not saying I'm Bruce Springsteen. I'm really not saying I'm Bruce Springsteen. Did you see the slide about Yoda? I'm not that smart. I'm not that good. I'm just saying, don't be fooled into thinking that more is better. It's not. What's better is knowing how to work with what you've got. Knowing when you need something, knowing when you don't need something. Click. Thank you. So, 8200, bare bulb on the front so we can go in a softbox, and a cone in case I need it is all I take. A Godox 3030 collapses down about this big. Open, it's that big, so big I couldn't get it all in a shot. And that's the setup. The most basic, simple, one-light setup in the world. I'm here, my light is here. Take a picture of anybody in this room that way, and it's going to be fine. I feather the light across the front of the person. That's the best way to do it. It's just a way to do it. You can point it right at them if you want. You're just going to get a different look. You can move it closer. You can move it afar. You can get 4 or 5 different looks just from the one light. You don't need 14 lights to get a variety of looks. Here comes the water again. This is what it looks like on location. This is a week ago Saturday, doing a bar mitzvah. By the way, if you have a Jewish community in your town and you are like a wedding photographer and you're not doing bar mitzvahs, you need to get involved with bar mitzvahs. They are fantastic. Mom and dad have known this party is coming for 13 years. They are professionals. They are adults. They have the money. They need expertise. They're willing to pay for it. They want professionalism. And no one at a wedding ever comes in to pick up their wedding album and says, this is great, thank you. By the way, I'm getting married again next year. Here's a date, send me a contract. But with a bar mitzvah, the best thing that happens to me all week is when someone calls up and says, I'm looking for someone to shoot my oldest son's bar mitzvah. I have 4 children. Yes. That's 4 weddings. And you're doing the same work at a bar mitzvah that you do at a wedding. Fantastic community. They talk, everyone, the moms, you do a good job. They tell the other moms. You'll get word of mouth. So I'm always amazed when I go to conferences. I meet all these wedding photographers. I never meet anyone who's a bar mitzvah photographer. And then someone else will come to me and go, I'm a bar mitzvah photographer too. It's like the best kept secret in photography is how great bar mitzvahs are. So I set up my one light as if my one light here. I start to bring in the family, and there's my shot. There's grandma in her chair. There's her kids and her grandkids. I take this home. I drag a gradient up from the bottom of the screen to drop the exposure because the carpet's going to be a little white, a little bright, I should say. Bam. Make it darker, crop it, and that's a page in the album. Now, Eric was in here before me. McNally was yesterday. No one's showing a picture that's this basic and plain because they are surgeons. I'm a general practitioner. The world needs surgeons, but they need general practitioners too. If someone calls me and says, hey, can you? Yes, I can. And if I can't do it, I'll figure out how to do it before I get to you. My job is not to be the very best at anything. My job is to be very good at everything. At least that's me. You got to be what's right for you. But it's okay. If you can be better at whatever you want to do than 95% of the people in your town, you've got a living, and you can support your family. It works everywhere. One light, outside. How many people have kids? You kids like it when you say you want to take pictures of them? No. Junior prom is my daughter. Dad, just use my cell phone and take a picture in the yard. Why don't you just stab me through the heart? Are you out of your mind? You are going to give me 10 minutes. We're going to go to the park, and you're going to give me 10 minutes to get a shot. That's all I need. I got more than one. Put you in the shade, put that light in the same spot, balance out my ASIF, shoot it, and we're off to the races. Anybody recognize this pose? Shout it out if you know where it's from. Come on, no one in this room is as old as me. Pretty woman. Yep, that's right. I call this the pretty woman pose. Senior portraits all day long on location. Same thing, one light. This is lovely, wonderful light right there. By the way, when I'm done here, I'm going next door to the Godox booth, and I'm doing it all live. So come see me. I'll walk you through it step by step and show you everything that I do. Bat mitzvah girls. Stand them on a wall, throw up one light, snappy, 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 3 frames, I'm good, we're moving on. I work for 1 hour with these people. I produce 50 to 60 images for them to choose from. They usually can't narrow it down to less than 30 that they want to buy. So for me, variety and quantity makes me money. But it's got to be good variety and quantity. It can't just be trash. It's got to be good, and that's where the lighting comes in. Church, this is the oldest church in Tampa Bay. So old they had to move it, physically move it to a new location. He was a deacon in the church. The church was very important. One light. And these pictures are all very different. Different places, different people. But it's the same setup every single time. Same setup. Much more moody. Much more contrasty. Much more shadow. Why? What did you add? I didn't add anything. I just moved my light closer. I just took my light and moved it closer because I wanted more shadow. And this is what advanced lighting is. It's knowing when I'm taking the picture, you know what? I can light him normally here with this light, but what would really be good is if I got more mood into the picture and more dark and shadow, so if I just move the light closer, I'm going to get what I need. That's advanced lighting, understanding the properties of light. I did a bar mitzvah Saturday night, right before I came here, and I'm at the party, waiting on everybody to arrive, and they have these letters lit, illuminated at the party. It's outside under a tent. The river is behind them. Sun's starting to set. And I'm like, this is a good place to take a picture of my bat mitzvah girl. So I always keep, when I'm working events, I always keep my light on a stand sitting back somewhere in a corner. So I can quickly pop out my softbox, put it on, and go shoot something if I want to do something with off-camera lighting. So she comes in. Her friends are there. Her family's showing up. She's very excited. She just came from the temple where she had to do her live thing for an hour. The last thing she wants is some old dude to come over and go, hey, I need you for 30 minutes so I can take this picture that I want. That's going to end up being one picture in your album. No. I need to go over and say, hi, hey, can I get you for just a minute? Just a minute is all I need. And she goes, okay. And I bring her over to the letters, and I clear everybody out, and I set my light in the same spot, and I've already set my camera up, ASIF, and I go, pop, 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 3 frames. Thank you very much. And this is what I ended up with. And this, that's not what I ended up with. It jumped on me. She looks good for a bat mitzvah girl, doesn't she? That's what I ended up with. That's straight out of camera. I haven't touched that. Because I had to send this in after I'd already done my program because I wanted it in my program today. That's straight out of camera, no retouching yet, no anything. It kills me that I can't remember her name. She was really sweet and really nice, but I'm really bad with names. Took me literally 90 seconds with one light. And this will not win you any awards, but it will win you clients. Because most of the people in your town can't do it. Because they don't bother, because they don't want to. Carrying a light, it's a pain. Yeah, it's a pain, but I need to do something to distinguish myself better than you, or different than you. I shouldn't say better, I should say different. It's just different. You need to offer something a little bit different than the store next door. If everybody is a McDonald's, why should they drive a little further to your McDonald's? You got to give them, we got tater tots. You got to give them something. Hey, here's a sexy beast. This is in Colorado Springs, a place called Garden of the Gods. It's beautiful, and I think that's Pikes Peak behind me. We were there, and I was being shown around by some photographers. I was like, you know what? I don't have any pictures of me with a mountain in the picture because I'm from Florida. We don't have a mountain or snow. So let's take a picture. Well, we got a problem. The sun is blasting in from camera left. So what do? We think on our feet. Let's turn away from our normal position. Instead of facing this way, we'll face this way. We'll put the camera, the light from the sun there, which puts my face and my body into shadow. We'll move the light to the other side so that it is lighting up the shadow side because I want to control the light that is on my face. And then the sun becomes a kicker. This is also a perfect example of how you have to work with what you've got. Because there's something that is desperately wrong, that if this was in a competition or something, besides them saying you need a better model, they would say, there's a problem with this picture that you should never have happen, and it is that the line of the mountain goes right through my neck. Never should you do that. My photographer's laying in the gravel. The only choices were, I either have him stand up, in which case the mountain now goes above my head, and the mountain becomes more important than me, which, listen, nothing's more important than me. Or I get my head just above the horizon so that it's silhouetted in the sky, and I live with the line through my neck. The old rule about you have to know what the rules are before you break them, this is a good example. What's important is that I know that it could be better, but you can't always get everything you want. But what's important is that you know it could be better, so that the next time you do it, if you can fix it, you do. I'll also tell you, and this is probably true of everyone who ever speaks, every picture that I'm showing, when it comes up, I'm finding 3 things wrong with it, and I'm embarrassed that you're even looking at it. So don't think you're the only one. It never stops. Every picture I've ever taken is crap. Every time I look at it, oh my God, look at the line going through my neck. Why didn't I clamp the hot spot right here? I could have moved away from those red boulders. They're kind of distracting. Oh yeah, never stops. Get used to it. Embrace the suck. Learn to love it. Is it windy outside and you can't use a softbox or you don't use an assistant? That's when the little cone comes in. By the way, little cone thing is technically what they call that, the little cone thing, if you look it up online. I'm not so good with labels. I work on the beach a lot. I shot over 500 beach weddings. These were destination brides. Literally, I would not meet them until they came back down the aisle. It's 1 hour. I shoot the ceremony. It takes 7 minutes. Then I move everyone over. I shoot the group shots. Now we're about 30 minutes in and about 30 minutes away from sunset. I take the bride and groom out to the water, and I do 30 minutes of sunset pictures with them, and I sell them the pictures after the ceremony. So if I don't produce good images that they want to buy, I don't make any money. My wife owned a beach wedding company, and I was the photographer. She built the whole company around the idea that we would have better photography than the other beach wedding companies. She came to me and she said, there's all these companies doing budget brides and destination brides, but their photography is not that great. And I said, no, it's not. And she said, why? And I said, because you're not going to get a good photographer with off-camera lighting to go out there and shoot a 1 hour wedding. And she said, well, why don't we provide that? We're going to be the ones that provide the tater tots. And we'll get clients because of that. I said, that's a great idea. Who's going to shoot it? And, she said, you're going to shoot it, or you're going to teach people to shoot it. And so that's what we did. As a result, the pictures are going to be more contrasty, deeper shadow. But I can count on one hand 500 weddings. I can count on one hand the number of times I was at the beach and I saw another photographer working with a bride and a groom on the beach at sunset that even had an off-camera light. So again, embrace it. What's important is that you're a little bit better than your competition. You don't have to be a world better. You can be great. It's up to you what you want to be. Click. There we go. This is 1:30 in the afternoon in July, getting married on what is literally the face of the sun. It is 100 degrees, burning hot, bright sun up left, right about here. What am I going to do? Everything goes out the window here. Flash goes to manual, full power. I'm going to need every bit of light that I can get. Then ISO goes to 100. Shutter speed goes to whatever the flash sync speed is. And then my aperture goes where I want it to be. And I look, and what's happening? My aperture, I want it to be about 4.5, 5.6. And I go and I look, and everything behind them is blown out. So what do? You can't go anywhere with your shutter speed. You can't go anywhere with your ISO. And yes, there's high-speed sync, but that's not going to work for me either, and I'll be happy to explain that to anybody in the next room when we're done. High-speed sync works, it's just not in this situation. So what have I got to do? I got to start changing my aperture until I get my aperture to where my sky looks good. And then what happens? You pop it, and the people aren't lit anymore. What happened? Well, your ISO is at 100, your shutter speed is at 200, and your aperture is pretty high, and you're fighting the sun, and even at full power with a Godox 8200, which is 3 times as powerful as a speed light, you still can't overpower the sun enough because you're cutting down your flash power with your shutter speed and your ISO and everything, and you can't get enough light. So what do? You start opening up that aperture until you finally get enough light on your subjects to get your picture. And there's a chance that the sky will be blown. Luckily here, I saved some of the sky, but you can see some of the clouds there to the right are a little blown. It might be completely blown. I cry for all of 2 seconds until they buy the image because no one else could light this. Not because I'm great, but because they just don't bother. At the best, at the most, they might use on-camera flash, right? So again, mountains through your neck. You have to lose the sun. What's important is that you recognize that, and you do everything you can to correct it. But if you can't correct it, get the shot and move on. Don't obsess over it when you're on location. Go back. Once you get good at it, and fast, you can start to move your lights all over the place and do all kinds of special stuff and create more images that you can sell or put into the album. Have them look to one side, take the light and move it over there and shoot it straight into their face that way. And let me tell you this, if you work at sunset, silhouettes are your friend because that's an extra shot every time. I light them, I shoot it, I turn the light off, I shoot them again, I just got 2 shots. Same pose, same location, same everything. One silhouetted and one not. It's romantic, it's moody. Yes, it is. It's also one more picture for me to sell you. The problem with that is, a lot of times what happens is the ground gets so dark They look great silhouetted in front of the sun, but the ground does not. So what do? You take your light, and you put it on the other side of it, and you blast it through. The light you see on the floor in front of them is produced by my flash. You know how you can tell? The sky is orange, but the light on the floor is white. And that's a nice little tip for you. I didn't do it here, but normally I carry a CTO gel, and I tape that on the front of my flash, and that way my flash becomes orange and it matches the sun. It became so prevalent, and I did it so much, that it basically became my signature shot. And when I was working on the beach with brides, and to this day, the last thing I do right when the sun goes into the water is this shot. Whoop, go again. I do it all the time. And it looks like it's the hardest thing in the world, and it's not. You set up your camera so the sky looks good, you put the light on the other side, and you shoot it. It's too bright, you turn the light down. Not hard to do at all. Let's talk about two lights. Now we're kicking it up, right? Woo, two lights, are you crazy? That's crazy talk with the two lights. When I go on the beach, if I know it's going to be a big family, if I know there's going to be groups, I'll bring a second 8200 with me. I set it up in a standard configuration. If you go look up a portrait lighting book that's 40 years old, Monty Zucker, you're going to find this setup. Same light, same position as before, but a fill light behind you and high. And this light washes your scene and fills in your shadows a little bit. Now here's where it's going to get tricky. It's not actually tricky at all. Here's where it's going to get less tricky. All of your lights, all of your controls, all of your remotes, you got group A, B, C, D. You got all these different settings. I want group A at 1, group B, I want it 3, so that group B is brighter than group 1, or group 3, all these different things you can do, right? And these are great in a studio if you're setting up your lights and they're shooting that way all the time. But on location, it's more stuff you have to worry about. I want to keep it simple. So what I do is I set both my lights to the same group, and they're treated as if they're one light. And I shoot in TTL. So if you don't know how TTL works, it's literally magic. When you take a picture, you pull the trigger. The camera commands the flashes, which it doesn't know how many flashes you have. It doesn't know where they are, how far they are. It doesn't know anything. It treats them as one light. If they fire a little pulse of light, that light goes out, it hits your subject, it bounces off, it comes back into the camera. The camera reads that light and goes, okay, that's X amount of light. I need Y amount of light to make this picture look good. So X needs to be 3 times brighter. So it sends out another signal to take all those flashes and turn them up 3 times brighter, and then it pops them again, it opens the shutter, and it takes the picture. It does that every time you pull the trigger, if you're in TTL mode. Pop, pulse, read, figure it out, send a signal, flash, take the picture at 1/250th of a second. It's magic. We live in a glorious time, ladies and gentlemen. Everything is great. It doesn't know what these lights are, where they are. It fires them as one thing. But what we know is there's a little something called the inverse square law. And it tells you how light falls off over distance. So, you take your main light and you put it in your normal spot. You take your fill light, you put it twice as far. That light will be 2 stops less bright on your subject as your main, if they're firing at the same power. So instead of having to do all that fancy stuff, I just go bang, bang, good. 2:1 ratio, ready to go. Full TTL, not manual. Flash is going to figure out my light. Pop it, clean, good. Fill light, main light. If I decide I want more fill light or less fill light, I just pick up the stand and move it. A little bit closer, a little bit farther. It's genius. It's a rare example of where there's all this sophisticated technology in the remote that you don't have to use. And you also are not going into manual mode. You're using just what you need. And that's what you can get with it. And again, this is a very bright, you see the blown out sky far right? Yeah, this is my life when I'm on the beach, is having to work with that horrible, horrible sun, because the sun is setting into the ocean, and I've got to fight it. I've got to combat it. So this is how I do it. 2 lights, one left, one behind me. Works at night, too. I had to put them here because those lights in the trees are the only place where there's light in the entire dang area. Why? Because they didn't listen to their photographer. And she's a photographer. She's a friend of mine. And I'm like, please, please end your ceremony 1 hour before sunset. Oh, we want to end right at sunset. Oh, please don't. But they did. So now I got to figure out how to light them quickly. A huge wedding party. It's just 2 lights, one here, one here. Let's talk about headshots. There's several ways to light a headshot. First, there's the traditional way. And the traditional way is simple. Same thing, 1 light here and a reflector, or a second light, because a reflector is in effect a second light. You bounce the light into the reflector in front of your subject, not on your subject, in front, because what you're trying to create is a wall of light. So your main light hits your reflector here, and that becomes a wall of light that pushes in. Basically a 2-light setup, but using a reflector instead of a light. This is what it looks like. This is backstage. They have this conference every year in Orlando, and it's the largest graduation of homeschooled kids in the state. It'll be like 350, 400 homeschooled kids all graduating. It's fantastic because they get to walk across the stage and do everything that the high school kids in the schools do, but they're homeschooled. So it's really wonderful. Live, they're doing it on stage. I'm backstage doing cap and gowns of every single kid before they go up on stage. We cannot make a mistake. We take 2 frames only of each kid. Not my job. This is a friend of mine, same guy with all the stuff that I showed you bringing him. He's out front doing the stage, and I'm in back doing the portraits, and this is his setup. 1 light bounced into a reflector, and he's got a hair light in there as well. I don't have a picture from this, but this is a perfect example of the setup. I had to go fill in for another friend of mine. He shoots the Chamber of Commerce, or this would have been Chamber of Commerce. This would have been the people that run a city. Not the board of directors. What are they called? Major. What? Major. Council. What was it? Not the mayor, the council, the group. City council. Right, city council. So I had to go fill in for him. So I had to mimic his style. He shoots left, right with a hair light, so I had to set it up and do it, and this is what you get. Now, when I am on location and shooting with a natural background, I don't use this setup. In fact, I never use this setup unless I'm copying somebody else's light. What I use is standard clamshell lighting. So I want to set up with a long lens if possible, because when you're using a natural background, you want it to be blurry. So I use a long lens. I want to try and get out to about 85 FF if I can. I use a shallow depth of field. Again, I want that background to be blurry. I use clamshell lighting, and I have my subject standing, not sitting. Why? Well, there's 2 really good reasons. One, it's easier for me to pose you if you're standing, because I can say, mirror me. Move like this, do this, do this, do this, and get the shot. Whereas if you're sitting, I got to be like, oh, turn your chair this way and get your feet out from under, and et cetera, et cetera. But there's an even bigger, more important reason, and it is this. If I'm going to put you on a stool, I have to carry a stool, and I don't want to carry a stool. Right? I want to keep it simple. Also, if you're working and doing a lot of headshots on location, it's much faster to cycle them through if they don't have to sit down. There are drawbacks to it as well. By the way, this is my kit if I'm going to do a headshot. That's everything I need. Clamshell lighting. Oh, go back. There's a better way of showing this, but I couldn't figure out how to make the thing tilt. It looks like I'm shooting through the reflector. I'm not. It's a reflector here and a light here, shooting straight down towards the reflector, coming straight into your face this way. I'm going to show you how to do it next door. So there are advantages and disadvantages. First of all, it's best in a tight space. When I am working in a doctor's office and they've got me in a little tiny waiting room and there's chairs everywhere, or I'm in the conference room of a lawyer's office, I'm lucky if I have enough room to put up my backdrop, which is 5 feet wide. I'm really lucky if I have enough room to go another 3 feet outside that backdrop with my lights. So what I want to do is I want to keep a tunnel that is exactly 5 feet wide. My backdrop has to be 5 feet. I want everything in that tunnel so I can work in a more narrow space. It also means I can reproduce my lighting more easily. Right? Because I'm much more likely to be able to reproduce that light in that tunnel in the next place I go to than I am if I'm doing it this way and suddenly the next place I go to is smaller and I can't do it. So that's why I like the consistency of it. I shoot headshots for Humana has a chain of doctor boxes, and I've been to like 12 of them. I do all their doctors, and the pictures all have to look the same. So I have to be able to shoot no matter where I am and make them look the same. So I use clamshell lighting. It's easy to duplicate. And flat lighting erases wrinkles. Everyone loves that. Now, the drawback to it is that your friends who are portrait photographers will judge you because there'll be no shadow on your face. And they've been taught that you have to have shadow on the face so that you get depth, and you do. But if my clients love it, That's all that really matters to me. Also, clamshell lighting is also called fashion lighting, and if it's good enough for an expensive fashion model, it's good enough for my clients. So, on location, there's my setup. This is an environmental company. They want their pictures done outside, so I've got a clamshell. Remember that Koopa bar that I showed you before, that metal bar? This is when it comes into play. So instead of having to have a big boom arm, which is hard to manipulate and use and hard to carry, I just have this bar that I put on top of my stand, and I put my softbox and light there and point it down, and it sets it off center so I can shoot the head right here, and the bar is here and not in my shot. I set it up, and I shoot it, and this is what I get. One light, one reflector. I timed it. I went into a doctor's office, got out of my car, went in, set it all up, brought in the doctor, shot a bunch of frames, showed him, had him pick his favorite, broke it back down, went back out to my car. It was 20 minutes start to finish. I don't make a lot of money when I go to a doctor's office to do one headshot. I don't want to spend 2 hours doing it. I want to do something that's better than my competition, but that I can set up and break down fast. I have a conference that me and a buddy of mine do. I have a podcast called Photobomb. We do a thing called Inside Out, where you spend a day with us, and half the day you spend inside with him, and half the day you spend outside with me. Yeah. I was in a vacant lot in downtown Orlando. I just did headshots of everybody who was at the conference so I could show them the lighting, but also to show how easy and quick it is to set up. I had a guy call me and say, oh, I want something, but I want it to be more modern and urban. I said, great. Do you have windows in the building that you live in? You live in downtown Tampa? I said, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, fantastic. I'll just use those windows. I'll blur them out. Same exact lighting. We're off to the races. Remember the bar mitzvah boy we started with? There you go. There's his bar mitzvah portrait. Same exact lighting. Do I need to add a background? No problem. I bring in a background. It can be a pop-up, a flex. It can be anything, and I add it. Do I light it? Of course I don't light it, because I want to keep it simple. The more stuff you add, the more things that can go wrong. And this is especially true when you're doing an event like this where you're going to be shooting headshots of people at a conference. I want it to be as simple as possible. I may have to light it, and if I do, I will. If they want the background to be pure white, I'm going to have to hit it with a light, but only if I have to. Orthodontist office, right? I'm moved around the highlight books and the who remembers highlights? Right? You go to the orthodontist, the dentist office, at the highlight books. You have to find things in the picture. I move around all that stuff, move the chairs out of the way, set up a background, same exact lighting. Piece of cake, always the same, no problem. Now, if I want to add a light, is it a hair light? No. Because when you're using clamshell, the light's up here, and you're going to get most of the light that you need on the hair. So I don't need a hair light. If I'm going to add a light, it's going to be a kicker. Now, the trick to a kicker is a kicker doesn't work unless it's hitting a shadow. So all you have to do is take your same clamshell setup and just move it off center. This is going to be automatic if you don't have the Koopa bar. If you don't have the bar, then you're going to always be off center. In fact, if you go downstairs, they've got this exact setup downstairs. The little curved reflector underneath downstairs, and they've got that, and it's a little off center. So you're getting a little bit more depth. You're getting a little bit more directional light. So yeah, you can do that. You can get your standard left to right look while still having your lights inside your 5-foot corridor. And that's what you get with a kicker. I'm still only using 2 lights. Main light, reflector, kicker. If I bring in a third light, it's going to be a kicker, and then I'll add a hair light. You've already seen that setup. It's this one right here. And it produces Councilman Booray. You just moved in that chair and you laughed at me. I love you. How come you haven't been there the whole time? You went to the bathroom. A likely excuse. Now, if I need a background color, yeah, I can background color. Background color is easy. If you were here for Eric, who just spoke, you guys saw a lot of this. And if you're watching this at home, go find Eric. Eric Stoner, who did a whole hour on this. All you have to do is use a dark background, dark gray or black, get yourself a gelled light, and hit it. And you're off to the races. Ah, we jumped a slide again, didn't we? There it is. So you can create any color background that you want with gels. Why? Because I don't have a studio for starters. I just have a room in my house. But I definitely don't have the setup where I can have 12 racks of colored paper to produce whatever I want. So if I have to have a color, no problem. I just hit it with a gel and create what I need. Again, I am online. Just go to YouTube at Booray Perry. And now I will answer your questions. Questions, anyone? There we go. Yes, ma'am.
What is the name of the bar you keep referencing?
It's called a Koopa bar, K-U-P-A, okay. Koopa. And I've done I always forget what it's called, and then I have to start emailing my friends and be like, okay, what's the name of that bar? I always forget. If I need a new one or someone asks me, I never know the answer. But because of this conference, I had to look it up and memorize it just so I could tell you guys what it's called. It's K-U-P-A, and B&H has it. You can buy it from B&H. Who else got a question? Yes, ma'am.
I saw your webinar where you had slightly different ending.
When this?
Yeah.
Well, it was much different. My webinar that I've already done, the one I did about a week or so, half that thing was all about bounce flash.
So that was my question.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on bounce flash.
So if I'm at a reception, I want to light a dance floor. I saw at the end of your webinar you had the kid in the.
Yes.
You had two lights on the stage.
Yeah.
Were you using a bounce flash to light the boy directly on your camera?
No. His question is, what if you want to light a room at a reception? How do you light it? Well, first of all, most rooms at a reception I can light just with bounce flash off my camera straight off the ceiling. I bounce it behind me. By the way, bounce flash, that's the miracle of all miracles. It's the easiest thing in the world to do, but it'll change your world if you use it. If you start bouncing, stop bouncing off the ceiling in front of you and start bouncing off the wall and the ceiling behind you. It'll change everything for you. But if I'm in a situation where I can't bounce because the ceiling happens to be black, for example, then what I'll do is I'll run up two lights in the corner, two 8200s, and I'll just cross them right over the dance floor, just like this. Again, they're in the same channel, working the same way. But in the example he's talking about, it's a boy, the hora, he's up in the air, and it looks like it's perfect 2-1 lighting. His face is lit, but he's in shadow here, and it's not perfect 2-1. I don't have set up 2-1. All it was he happened to be a little bit closer to this light than he was to this light. And so it looks like I'm a genius, but I'm not. I'm just trying to get the shots. Who else got a question? Yes?
When it comes to shooting in natural light outdoors with the flash, do you, I guess, tend to move the subject towards the shade, or how would you light the subject first to get the ambient light?
Question was, how do I work with people outside working with ambient light? Do I try and move them towards the shade? Yes. If I'm working outside, say I'm doing senior photos or something like that, I'm in a park, the first thing I'm going to do when I get there is look for open shade. Find me a spot where there's open shade, and that's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to start by using ambient light only. Because if you find a spot that's open shade, let's say I'm here and this is an overhang that's blocking the sun. If this is where the sun is out here, you get what we call garage light, okay? And it's the light that you get in your garage. Go to your garage, open up the door on a sunny day, stand in the back of the garage or get someone to stand in the back of the garage, and then have them walk forward towards the front of the garage and look at their face. And there will be a point where they hit a spot where suddenly their face is beautifully lit. Because that's the spot where the light's coming in just right, garage light. So that's the first thing I'll do. I'll start out my ambient light with using just ambient light in my senior. I'll put them in that open shade. I'll move them forward. Great. I'll dial in at 2.8, zoom in tight, and do headshots. Right? I'll get 4 or 5 usable shots right there. And here's the best thing about that trick. The best thing about that trick is that once you shoot that first one, it's good, it's clean, the light is fantastic, this background is all shallow, and they look good, and you go bam, 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 bam. You dial in a good one, and you go, this is what I'm getting. And you show it to the client. They're nervous. They're worried. No one likes getting their picture taken. You're nervous. You're worried. You're afraid you're going to screw up. You show them that picture, you will visibly see them go, oh, wow, that's really good. Which is them saying, you really do know what you're doing. And when they do that, your brain will go, I really do know what I'm doing. You'll relax, and they'll relax, and you'll have a better session all the way around. Way back.
You say the background is usually dark. I mean, nobody really thinks that it's too dark, that the whole cast of the picture is kind of dark and moody.
No, I've never had anyone, he asked, my background is usually dark. Do people complain about the dark? Well, are we talking about like outside or? Well, I don't really set the background that dark outside. I usually try and treat it out one stop under. And listen, the old school photographers are driven crazy by the fact that now, because everyone takes pictures with their cell phone, the idea that the background is brighter than the subject is just normal now. You see it all the time, and maybe you do it too. People like it. So the days of photographers standing up here and talking about make your background one stop under your subject, they're coming to an end because all things change. Everything is subjective and everything is relative and to what's popular at the time. So Blowing out the background can be very popular, especially with younger kids. That's what they're used to. I'll tell you what else, I'll get to you in just a second. I'll tell you what else the younger kids are used to that's driving me crazy, is that when you take their picture and they come back and they go, my face looks fat. No, that's your face. Your problem is you've been using a wide-angle lens on your camera to take selfies since you were 6 years old, and you think that that thin, distorted face is what your face looks like. I had a guy come to me, had me come to do his headshot because he had lost some weight. He's like, I want to look like this, and it was a picture taken with a cell phone way up ahead, high above him. And I was like, okay, and I tried to explain to him that that's not the way he looks, that that's because of the cell phone. He said, I don't care, that's the way I want to look. I said, okay. I put a short, though, on my camera, a short lens on my camera, and put him in a chair and literally took the shot like this. He loved it. You got to give them what they want. You know, you can't fight them. Hang on, was it you, sir? Yes, sir.
Yeah, quick question. When you talk, that was hilarious, by the way. When you're at the beach, midday, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, when it's bright and you try to retain some of the sky, what is your stance on using ND?
ND. Oh, I love this question. The myth of ND. Neutral density filter. He's saying, what about bright sun? What about using neutral density? When you're in that situation, when I'm in that situation, my flash is at full power. And I'm trying to figure out how to set up my camera so that I can get that flash to produce enough light on my subject where I can see their face. A neutral density filter affects every light source. So if you put it on your camera, yes, it makes the background darker. 4-stop neutral density filter just knocks 4 stops off your background. It also just knocks 4 stops off the power of your flash, and your flash is already at full. And you're not getting the light that you need.
Unless you use a graduated.
I'm sorry?
Unless you use a grad neutral density.
I still didn't hear you.
Graduated neutral density.
Well, now you're getting fancy. You want to use a graduate? Yeah, there's always one guy who's going to come in here and show me up. You and your graduated neutral density filter. A graduated neutral density filter is a neutral density filter where only the top of it is dark. So it affects your sky, but it doesn't affect your ground. That's great if they're laying down, but my people are standing up and their head is in the sky. You know, so yeah, no, I don't. When I use a neutral density filter is when I'm shooting natural light and I want to shoot at f2.4 with natural light, and that's going to blow the sky out. That's when I pull in the neutral density filter, which knocks everything down 3 or 4 stops, and it allows me, the best use for me for a neutral density filter is to allow me to get a shallow depth of field using natural light. But if I'm in a situation like that on a hot beach on a bright day, the neutral density filter doesn't help me because it knocks down every light source, including my flash, which is already too low. I'm trying to get more light out of it. Yes, sir?
What about high-speed sync?
Okay, high-speed sync. Okay, here's the thing you have to understand about high-speed sync. It's great as long as you've got enough flash power. If you've got power to spare, great. But in the situation I was just talking about, where you've got your flash maxed out, the way high-speed sync is, it's pulsing, right? Because your shutter opens and then it closes. And then you reach a point, the flash sync speed, where it starts to close before it's finished opening. So instead of opening and closing, it does this. And it just travels across like this. So the flash, it doesn't pour into your camera like a water hose. It turns itself on, it turns itself off. So what happens is you get this, and so it flashed at this point, and you get light in this part of your photo, but not in this part of your photo. So what it has to do is it has to pulse. It has to go pop, 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 like a strobe light. Pop, 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 so that it hits it across the entire travel. Well, think about it. Your flash at full power, which is where you are when you're in trouble on the beach, there's no way it can recycle and charge back to full power enough to shoot 3 or 4 times at full power in 1/1000th of a second. So what happens? It has to cut down its power. So you're trying to get more power out of your flash, and now you've engaged high-speed sync, and your flash is cutting down to half power or a third power or even less so that it can recharge fast enough. It wants to charge the capacitor and then fire third, instead of full, because it can't fire that fast. So high-speed sync works great if you've got a flash that's bright enough that you've got wiggle room. But if you're in a situation where you are dying to get more light and you've got everything maxed out, high-speed sync will not get you that light. I think I'm about done. Am I done? Hang on, one more real quick.
More question. Clamshell, wonderful idea, thank you. Your preferred f-stop, are you a 2.8 or do you like to have the ears?
It depends on what I'm shooting. I prefer 2.8 usually. Again, this is APS-C, so that's 4. I'm going to use a 7200 equivalent lens So but I'm probably going to be 85. So maybe 85 and 2.0 on the APS-C, maybe 4.0. I like the ear to start to go a little bit shallow. And the reason I'll do that, it really depends on what I'm doing. Like if it's a lawyer headshot, okay, I might go up and it's more clean, everything's in focus. But if it's something where I have a personal branding company or whatever, then I'll go a little bit more Hollywoody, a little bit more, let's go more shallow, let's go. And again, this is just changing trends. Everyone will say, this is how you do it. Today, this is how you do it. Tomorrow, it changes. You could be the person who changes it. You could be the person who does it a certain way, and suddenly people go, that's great, and we're all copying you. So what you have to find is do what you like, because the more you do something that you love, the easier it is to sell.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go next door and do live shooting, so be happy and come join me over there.
Round of applause, everybody. Booray Perry.